The gut really is the intestine. So when we talk about the gastrointestinal system, the gastro is the stomach, the intestines is the gut, essentially. And a lot of people, when they're talking about what we'll be talking about today, which is the gut microbiome, etc., is mainly talking about the large intestine, but the gut really includes the small intestine as well.
It seems like everyone is talking about gut health now. Well, over the last 5 years, we've seen an increase by 500% in the search term gut health. But why? Why all this interest in gut health? Well, there's 3 main reasons, and the scientific community is super interested in these. The first is the links between gut health and obesity. We know that in Australia, over 2/3 of us are overweight or obese, so this is a significant issue. And what scientists have found is that when obese people reduce the number of calories coming into their diet, their gut microbiota actually reflect those of a lean person. So this could potentially have implications for obesity treatment down the track.
So the microbiome is kind of the genetic material that we have outside our body and inside our body that actually isn't human. So it's all of those little microbes, or the genetic material of all the microbes that sit on our skin, live inside our mouth, live in our groin area and underneath our armpits, but also live in our stomach and intestinal tract. There's a huge number of these that actually sit in the gut. So the microbiome in our gut accounts for at least 70% of those sort of microorganisms. And the microorganisms are not just bacteria. We talk a lot about these bacteria. And the reason we talk, I guess, a lot about bacteria is because they're single-celled organisms and we can see literally what they do. Whereas viruses are really hard to track because they're little strands of DNA and RNA. But these single-celled organisms, they can release enzymes and they can break things down, and so we can really see what's happening. So when we're talking about the microbiome, commonly we're talking about the bacteria that's actually in the gut.
The second reason why people are talking about gut health is because the gut health has been linked to mental health. We know in Australia that 1 in 5 Australians will experience a mental health condition at some point in their life. If you have a good diverse range of gut microbiota, then you have a lower risk of developing stress, anxiety and depression. Now, some researchers at Deakin University have just discovered that people that follow a diet closer to the Mediterranean style of diet. Now, this diet is high in fruit and vegetables, legumes, whole grains, a little bit of fish and poultry, less red meat than average, a lot of olive oil, a little bit of red wine. People that follow a diet closer to this have a 33% lower risk of developing depression than people that don't follow a diet like this. So how interesting is that what we put in our mouth can actually affect our mind. And the third reason that scientists are really interested in this area is because gut health has been linked to immunity. So we all want to have great immunity, right? Well, we know that 70% of the immune cells are actually housed in the gut. Now, what the probiotics, or the good bacteria, do in our gut is they help the immune cells in our body identify the invasives so they can act accordingly. So there's all these interesting interactions in our body that we're just beginning to find out more about.
The probiotics are effectively the substances that we put in our mouth to try and cause proliferation of the gut bacteria. So they would be things like anything that's fermented essentially has lots of bacteria in. So things like kefir and yogurt and sauerkraut, they actually have bacteria in that when we consume it, it eventually, assuming that it doesn't get destroyed by the acid in the stomach, is whether it can pass through and eventually get into your large intestine. And it has to be in enough quantity that it can provide a beneficial effect as well. And then it starts to proliferate because it starts feeding often on the food that we've eaten, but sometimes even on the mucus lining of the intestines. It actually thrives off that. So that's probiotics. So prebiotics, essentially they're fibers. These gut bacteria really feed primarily off fiber. And there's lots of different types of fiber. Fiber is essentially a carbohydrate, and you've got short chains and medium chains and long chains of lots of sugars, and they're all held together with different bonds. We actually don't have any enzymes that can break down fiber, but the bacteria in our guts can actually release enzymes from outside of their own bodies that can actually cause this digestion. So you're breaking down fiber essentially into what are called short chain fatty acids. And those are really important because they provide all the energy that the intestinal cells actually thrive off.
Now, some tips that I like to share with people are to have snacks like apple and nut butter, for example, or a banana split with yogurt, or stew some apples and have them with porridge or bircher muesli, or even grate some veggies into your pasta sauce, or throw some spinach and mushrooms into your omelette. So there's lots of different ways you can really pack those prebiotics into your food. The second way you can help your gut health is to reduce sugar, alcohol and artificial sweeteners. So I know this can be tough, but what I like to suggest to people is to use a habit app. So you can, on your phone, you can have an app and it can remind you, say, okay, I'm just going to have alcohol on Friday and Saturday nights, maybe have desserts on a Sunday, and keep it like that. And the third way to improve your gut health is to increase fermented foods in your diet. So for example, yogurt, kefir, fresh sauerkraut, and kombucha even have living organisms in them. But remember, not all fermented foods have living organisms. So bread, for example, sourdough bread and beer are fermented foods, but there's no live organisms in there at all. If you have a diagnosed gut condition like IBS or ulcerative colitis, then you might be better off choosing a diet which is similar to a FODMAPs or a lower FODMAPs diet. Now, what are FODMAPs? FODMAPs are specific compounds that are found in certain foods that can tend to exacerbate symptoms for people with these conditions. So before making any significant dietary changes, it's really important to talk to your health professional.